Hello, we are on the ground with the classic Cessna 172 in Microsoft Flight Simulator. This is the one that comes with, I think it's the Premium Deluxe version of Flight Simulator, the steam gauge version of the Cessna. If we go and jump inside, we can see in the cockpit the most interesting thing about this aircraft, and the reason we're looking at it today, is it has the Garmin GNS530 and 430 stacked inside it. So we are going to have a look at the OBS functionality today. In order to do that, we're going to fly quite a short flight, but one that will allow us to have a play with that functionality. So before we start talking about that, because we can talk about it en route, let's go and get the airplane started up. So we'll put the mixture to rich. We will push in the fuel cutoff down here. This is new, by the way. It's appeared very recently. We'll go and turn the battery on. We'll go and turn the beacon light on before we start the engine. So mixture's in, cutoff's in. We push the throttle in a little bit, and then we turn the magnetos all the way to start, and the engine bursts into life. So while it's warming up, we're going to turn the nav lights on, we're going to turn the pitot heat on, and we'll turn on the avionics master switch, and the alternator can also come on now. Now the engine's up and running. So the Garmin's are powering up as we speak. While that's happening, let's go and have a look at our flight plan we're going to be flying. So we are at Boonville, D83, and we're going to fly over to Lampson Field, which I've done on demo flights before. But today we're going to go via a waypoint to do some illustrations of how things work with the avionics suite and the autopilot. So we're going to go via this Hopla waypoint. Okay, so we'll just go and capture the satellites in the GPS. We'll go and calibrate the altimeter while we're sitting here. And we can cut the engine back down a bit now. We've just been revving it to warm it up a little bit. And checking around some of the switches just to make sure everything's okay. Okay, so we've captured and we've appeared on the ground now. So the first thing I wanted to look at today was, if you do have the 530 and the 430, it actually makes sense that you can have the 430 on its first page of the first page group. And it's something else I need to mention actually. I've been reading the Garmin instruction book for these units. In the past, I've commonly heard real-world pilots refer to the groups of pages in the Garmin avionics hardware as chapters, but the Garmin documentation actually talks about them as page groups. So from this point forwards, I will be talking about them as page groups. So when you use the outer ring at the bottom right, you can switch through page groups, and obviously they have many pages in each group. So just wanted to clear that up. Okay, so on the 430, obviously it's got a smaller screen, so it doesn't lend itself to showing a visual view. And we know that on the 530, if we turn to the first page of nav, we get an arc mode, which gives us data around the corners. And that's all well and good, but if you've got both, we can kind of have the best of both worlds. So what we do is we put this on the second page, which gives us the north-oriented view on the display by default. On the 430, we turn that to the first page, and because it's got a smaller screen, it doesn't do that hybrid arc mode. It just gives us the numbers. So we get distance from the track, distance to the next waypoint, the track direction, and our direction of track. Oh, and the estimated time en route and ground speed. So let's go and get the airplane in the air, and then we'll be able to see this actually doing, what we want it to be doing. Right. So parking brake off, flaps to takeoff position, increase the throttle gently. And airplane's moving. It always takes a little bit of thrust just to get the airplane rolling, and then you can typically cut it off. Okay, there's a van in our way. So we are going to... Oh no, he's now going to race us down the runway by the look of it. That's nice of him, isn't it? So we have got wind coming down the runway. Whoa, near miss there. Must be a gold van convention going on today. Or maybe it's a ice cream van convention. So the wind is coming from behind us, so we are going to taxi down to the end of the runway and spin round and take off in the opposite direction. So we'll just follow this van down. No doubt he's going to park somewhere that will be completely in our way. Now we don't want to get too fast because we'll start to get lift over the wings. So I am going to overtake him though. No doubt he's going to be in our way in a moment. Oh, is this the police? Have they found us? God, it's all happening today, isn't it? We're at a tiny little rural airfield, and the AI is serving us up quite the treat in terms of all the drama happening on the runway. So the actual route we're flying is only about 24 miles, but it's just long enough for us to be able to talk about things along the way. Okay, so we're now heading into the wind. So throttle open, accelerate along the runway. Now because we do have that headwind, we should be able to rotate quite early. So we're going to go for 60 knots, and yeah, we've come straight off the ground without any problems whatsoever at 60 knots. Okay, so we'll just fly it by hand for the moment. We'll raise the flaps up a bit, but not completely. We're not retracting the flaps completely. So we're going to hold on to between 500 and 1,000 feet a minute on our climb out. And then we'll do a left turn, fly downwind, and then left again. Because you'll notice we're almost going the direction we want to be going. Actually, we haven't programmed the flight plan yet, have we? Should we do that while we're doing this? So, flight plan, press it in, roll it, click on the keyboard. So we're going from D83, Boonville, enter. That's interesting. While that was on keyboard mode, I couldn't control the aeroplane. That's something to be aware of, isn't it? And we're going to 102, so you have to be careful with this. Click on that, 102, which is Lampson Field. Enter. Now let's go and have a quick look at Little Nav Map. We want to go via Hopla. Yeah, so we roll back over here. Let's just turn this 380 degrees before we do it. Otherwise we're going to be halfway there before we even get a chance to talk about it. And we're really trying to just climb to get over these hills. Okay, so let's just move ourselves around the pillar. So you can see there's Boonville that we've just taken off from. Okay, so let's go and put in Hopla. Enter, enter. So there we go, we've got our route. So we can push this in, press flight plan. There we go, we're going the opposite direction now. From Boonville, we'll just have a little look at it out of the aircraft. It's a lovely little airstrip. It's kind of in rural western USA, out near the coast. And because it's in this kind of sheltered valley, it's a great place to fly aeroplanes and just, you know, for practicing. So that's why I use it in demonstration flights so often. I came across it quite by chance. Okay, so we'll just turn again. Let's center the view up with F. So again, we're just looking to hold anything above 500 feet a minute without killing the speed too much is fine. And the reason we're doing this pattern, obviously we're going to come out almost on the track we want to be on. So this comes into its own now with what I was talking about. You can see we want to be on 104 degrees for the first leg. And it tells us we're at 140 degrees, 130 degrees, and so on and so forth. But even more impressively, look, it shows you if you are off. It shows you kind of your localizer readout that you would get on here, which is obviously this is doing, because we can switch the CDI between GPS and VOR radio. When it's in GPS mode, it shows you that same reading, that we are off to the left of the track. Yeah, so At the moment we are flying towards the track, so if I go and engage the autopilot now, it will go to roll and vertical speed mode by default. Yeah, we can actually say let's put this in nav mode, and we are close enough, and because we are on an intercept course, it's fine and it's gone to nav mode and it will capture the track for us. While we're at it, we'll also go and set the height we want to get to, so we'll say 4,000 feet, or so let's go for 5,000 feet, and so we want to get there at 700 feet a minute, please. So the aircraft is now going to fly to 5,000 feet at 700. Notice it's turning left, it's crossed over the track, so this yellow line, look, is moving into the middle, which corresponds with the localizer there moving into the middle, or CDI I should say, course deviation indicator. Okay, so that's quite cool, isn't it, that you can get this data and you can see how far away you are from the track. So 0.1 of a nautical mile, and you know, obviously it's less by the second because we're still intercepting. Distance to the next waypoint, so 10 miles. The direction of our track over the ground, and the direction of the track in the flight plan. So how long it's going to take to get there, and our ground speed. So obviously you can see as we're climbing we're losing speed, and the reason for that primarily is mixture. So we're going to remove the flaps now entirely, and we're going to move the mixture back, and you will hear the engine accelerate. But also we can start to turn down the vertical speed, so we're only going to climb at 500 feet a minute now, and you'll see that will also have a bearing on the climb rate. So we'll come down to 300 feet a minute. We really don't need that much climb rate. Okay, so we're flying along, and we can zoom in, or zoom out, sorry, on this track, and you can see we are flying towards Hopla. When we get a bit closer, I will show you what OBS does. It's interesting. If you remember, when you are flying towards a radio beacon, when the avionics are in VOR mode, you can use the OBS to choose your course into the radio beacon. Yeah, you can choose the radial you're going to fly to or from. But the OBS button lets you do the same trick with GPS navigation. So let's see it do it. So before we do this, I am going to align the OBS with our actual track. So we want it on 104 degrees. Yeah? So if we spin this round to 30, 60, 90, 104, it's about there somewhere. This is just so we don't get a huge surprise on what happens here. If I press the OBS button, watch what happens to our route. It is now not going around that corner anymore. If we were to zoom out, what we've effectively got is a magenta line up to the waypoint we were travelling towards, and then a white line beyond it. So the aircraft now is staying on this line. Yeah? But the avionics suite is paying no attention to the rest of the route. The rest of the route is still there. But while OBS has been pressed and it's highlighted here, it is going to follow the direction on the Omni bearing selector instrument, and we can change that. So watch what happens. It's rotating around Hopla, and the aircraft is turning to get back onto that track, so we can choose the radial to approach the waypoint from while we are in OBS mode. Yeah? It's neat, isn't it? So if we wanted to, we'll just wait for the aircraft to straighten up, so it's going to turn left again. Just make sure we're going to miss this hill. We're quite close to it. We're still climbing gently, 4,500 feet a minute. Yeah, we're going to be fine. So we just wait for the aircraft to stabilise itself and to stop turning. It's quite a windy day, so it's quite difficult to know when it's finished its job. So the other really good use for being in OBS mode is flying holds. So at the moment you can see we're 6 miles away from Hopla. But say for some reason air traffic control came onto us and said, can you actually do a hold at Hopla? And they might give us the pattern of that hold that they want. So it might be, you know, on your inbound heading, begin the hold. Can you do a racetrack hold? And can you fly 1 minute legs, you know, 1 minute legs around the hold each way? And doing a left hand hold, for example. So what you could do is before you get to Hopla, you go and make sure your heading bug is going the same direction you are, so there's going to be no surprises when you do this. You leave this in OBS mode as a visual reference. Obviously I'm going to do this early before we get there, but it'll give you the idea. We switch to heading mode on the autopilot and we spin the heading through 180 degrees. So we're going to go to just about 305 degrees, which was the reciprocal at the time, you know, of the direction we were on. So it's easy to work out the reciprocal. If you don't know the reciprocals off the top of your head for angles, just look opposite. So it actually helps. That's why these markers are so useful around the edge of the compass. So the autopilot's leveling us out to go 305 degrees. It's kind of overcooked it a little bit, but if you just look opposite on the red marker, that tells you the reciprocal. Yeah, so 125 degrees will be back on the path we were going. So we're now flying the opposite direction than we were. Now the reason we use the heading mode to do this, and the reason we don't just spin the OBS round itself, is if you want to fly a racetrack, we want to come back left again and be back on the track we were on. If we just left it on nav mode and spun the OBS round, the aeroplane would crab across and get back onto the magenta line going the opposite direction. We don't want it to do that. We want it to fly parallel to it and then turn back onto it. So we can do that. Look, if we spin the heading bud back around again, we've flown parallel to the track and now we're coming back. So obviously as soon as the aircraft is anywhere near an intercept course for the direction we were originally going, you can turn the OBS mode back off, or sorry, you can turn nav mode back on. And we'll find out what happens when we turn OBS mode back off in a moment. So obviously we weren't, because this is a windy day, we've obviously been blown, you know, across from the original track. So you might have to figure that out if you're going to do things ultra accurately. This is just a physical demonstration, really. So now we're heading back towards Hopla. So if I go back to nav mode on the autopilot, notice it's doing both. It knows we're on an intercept course, so it's allowing the nav mode to be armed. Then when we get to the track, it will switch to nav mode automatically. It's worth pointing out, if you were flying parallel to the track, it won't allow you to engage nav mode. You have to be on an intercept course and fairly near it for it to do it. Each unit, each different autopilot has different parameters, it seems, around that. If you go and find the book on the autopilot, you can probably find out the exact details about it. So let's just increase this intercept to make it happen quickly before we actually get to Hopla. So I'm just turning us right so we actually hit the track. So you can see this switch to nav mode. So you can see here we're a mile away from the track. 0.9 of a mile away. The waypoint is 5 miles away. It's quite cool, isn't it, being able to combine these views to have meaningful data. And we've gone to nav mode, so it will start turning left anytime soon, because we are now within 0.6 of a mile. So you can watch the marker at the top of the attitude indicator. It will roll at any moment. At the moment it's just fighting turbulence and the wind. Here we go, it's starting to roll, look. So it's just gently turning us onto the track. So what happens then when we turn the OBS mode back off? And what how do we get our flight plan back? So all we have to do is press OBS, but watch what happens. Our flight plan is back, but the point at which we turned OBS off is now the beginning of the track. Yeah? So the aircraft is still going to fly into Hopla like we asked it to. It's still in nav mode on the autopilot. And then it will carry on its way. So the takeaway, I guess, here is when you put the autopilot into OBS mode, it means you can use the Omni bearing selector to choose your track into the next waypoint, or to choose your radial, in effect, in the same way that you might with radio navigation with a VOR beacon. So hopefully this has made some sense to you, and hopefully it will help you in the future if you ever need to use it. I think the most obvious use for OBS is for flying holds. Yeah. Because when an aircraft, if you have a hold in a pattern or procedure, sorry, the aircraft, if it's a mandatory one, the aircraft will automatically go into the hold, and you will see OBS switch on all on its own to put you into the hold. Yeah, and it will follow that. It will track the hold all on its own, and then you can press it to release you out of the hold. But I think, yeah, the takeaway today though is really just the mechanics of it, that in OBS mode you can choose your direction into the waypoint away from the flight plan you were on. Okay, let's have a look at our place on the map. So we've done some crazy maneuvers, haven't we? But we're not going to worry too much about that. So you should see the aircraft start to turn left anytime soon. Just coming into Hopla, and the next leg of the journey will automatically become the active leg at the point we cross over. So 0 miles, it's flashing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, switch. Get ready. It's his famous last words time. There we go. There's a slight lag on it. It's quite cool that they have the flashing alerts now as well, isn't it? Just to get your attention. Okay. So I've covered kind of everything I wanted to cover today, so I'm not going to make you sit through watching me fly the next 10 miles over this hill into Lampson Field. Hopefully this was instructive though, and hopefully it kind of cleared away some of the mist around what the OBS button does. Notice it says suspend now. Yeah? So we could press OBS again, and it's just going to follow the track now. If we press OBS again, it goes into OBS mode, and we can change the track direction. Yeah, we could say we want to come into this airfield. We might want to do this, for example, to come in on the runway direction, and this will help us do it. Yeah, that's another good reason for using it. If you wanted to come in, we knew, for example, that Lampson Field, the direction of the runway here is 106 degrees. So what if we changed the OBS into Lampson Field to be 106 degrees? Okay, this is a very extreme example. So now notice though, this is really going to struggle to know what to do with that. So you have to go to heading mode to get it back in the ballpark. But at least we've got a diagram to work with now. So we would go to heading mode, and we'd obviously fly across to join the trek into the runway. I mean, this was a really crazy, extreme example of doing it, but you can see how useful is that to arrange an approach while flying visually, just so you get a visual reference of the trek of the runway direction across your map. Anyway, that's enough for today, I think, and I'll see you again soon. Hopefully that was useful. Take care. Like the video, subscribe, all the usual things all the YouTubers say. I'm not a proper YouTuber, am I? Anyway, see you again soon.